Hi guys, so I've now watched the Channel 4 documentary about Russell Brand. Please excuse this hairline. I had my roots done today and it is what it is. So I'm just going to get that out there so no one else comments on it before I've brought it up myself. So, I wrote some notes as I watched the show. So how it starts with, I believe her name was Alice, who was 16 at the time that she had a relationship with Russell Brand, or that she said she did. And it starts off with a clip where she phones his agent and basically says, I want to talk about Russell Brand being a sex offender. And I've wrote that down, and I wrote down straight under, why not phone the police? Like, what would be the agenda to phone the agent and not the police? But we'll come back to that, because obviously I've just wrote it in the way that the show was edited. So the second lady that was on was Nadia, who was played by an actress. And she received a late night call. She already knew Russell. I think she may have said she'd already slept with him. And then she had a late night call where he asked her to go round, and she said no, and he kind of talked around, and she went round late at night. I've wrote down there again because I'm writing as I go, and so I'm writing my thoughts as it's transpiring. So, and I've wrote down booty call, ? Because I know in my past, if I've had a late night phone call, I'm going to get in my car, drive to a guy's house. Doesn't make it okay, but I know why they're calling. Now, I've wrote down here that she switches a lot from past tense to present tense and switches back and forth. And I don't know how true it is. I just know that I've seen on something that is an indicator of someone who's lying. I'm not saying that I believe that, because I think I do that sometimes, and I know when I'm doing that I'm not lying. So I don't know. I've wrote that down just because I know I've seen it on something. Now, then it goes on to a lady who I think worked for him, maybe like an assistant type person, and she basically says he's a narcissist. I 100% believe that. And some of the behaviours that she talks about, me and my husband talk about this a lot. For example, when that Jimmy Savile programme came out, when we watched it back, we were like, oh my God, look how out there he is on these TV shows. It's obvious he was a paedophile and doing all this disgusting stuff. He's basically telling us. But at that time, all of his behaviours were considered okay. Obviously, as time goes on, we become more aware and things become less appropriate. So some of the behaviours that she's talking about are completely inappropriate now. But then, they weren't that inappropriate. Like, I remember watching him on TV thinking, that's so funny. And when I watched some of it back then, I was cringing a little bit, like, ooh, like that. And that's maybe why he's not so current now. There was a bit where he was sharing photos that women had sent him on his phone with, like, his mates, and that really, really gives me the ick, and it really makes me feel quite uncomfortable, and it is gross. It's disgusting. But there's a reason I don't send nude photos to anybody. I mean, one, because I've got a husband, but two, when I was single. There's a reason I don't send nude photos to people, or didn't send nude photos to people. And there I did it again, past tense, present tense. And that's because I don't want anyone else to fucking see them. That doesn't mean it's okay. I'm just saying what I think as I go. That's not okay. She was asked as well, the assistant lady, did did she ever suspect anybody was ever raped or sexually assaulted? And she said, like, no. Women were very, very willing to get with him, which is what I said earlier this afternoon when I first saw this story going. I was like, well, I wouldn't imagine he'd need to rape anyone because women used to throw themselves at him. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. So then we go back onto the 16-year-old Alice, who was briefly shown at the beginning. And I've wrote down immoral, but not illegal. Now, they refer to her on the show as a child. And she was 16 years old when she met him. My son's nearly 16, and I would consider him a child. However, a 16-year-old is legal for sex. I don't know where I sit on that, I'll be honest. She said that when she first met him, he was pretending to be really nice, and then obviously later the dark side comes out. Again, I'm not being unsympathetic. I don't know if that's TV worthy, just because isn't that like any man that we meet? I'm sure women do it as well, where a few months later your real self comes out. I've put here that I believe her, but she was 16 years old and legal. And I've put here as well, I 100% believe how she felt. I believe she was too young and it wasn't right at all. And I do believe he was a narcissist. I believe he was a womanizer. I believe he was a sex addict. I 100% believe that, and I 100% believe that that probably made her feel like shit at the time. Nothing was mentioned there about rape, but they used the word groom and they used the word child, and technically speaking, she was 16. And I know it's wrong. He was 30, she was 16. I once went out with a 33-year-old when I was 18. And it's only 2 years difference in terms of how old I was. I wasn't groomed. There was two... I don't know. The law states 16 years old. So when we're talking about criminal things, we have to stick within the law. So she comes back onto the show later, so we'll come back to her. Now, then it mentions a junior member of the team, and obviously the journalists involved have used the word junior there for a reason. However, I think it said she was over 18. Doesn't make it right, but it does make it legal. So far, I've not got further down there. So it showed her showing all the photos and little keepsakes and things that he'd given her. It seems a bit sentimental. Just my opinion on that part of what I was looking at. So she said she was a runner, that he made her feel really special. They had a friendship. And I've wrote down there, I believe her. So at that time I'm watching it and I'm saying, yeah, I believe this girl. And she wasn't played by an actor. So Alice and this lady, the runner, I believe were not played by actors. And also the assistant lady. So I've put here, how old was Rachel? And I've put old enough to work for Big Brother. And then I've put groomed in speech marks. Groomed as an adult, question mark, because she was an adult. So is the use of the word groomed okay in that circumstance? She said that she felt like he took advantage of her. And I 100% believe that this womanizer of a man took advantage of a young lady. Yeah. Then it goes on to 3 more people that worked for Big Brother, who were all played by actors. Again, they talk about how they used to go out into the audience. If he fancied somebody in the audience, they would go and get their numbers and things. A bit like a groupie kind of rock and roll thing I've seen in films, like rock and roll things where the groupies go and, they would get calls about girls calling up that they'd felt used because they'd slept with him the night before and then he didn't call them. I've put here womanizer, gross. And then they've said to, when some of the staff had complained about him, sort of sexual harassment type complaints from what I understand, they were told by their bosses, it's what happens with the talent. Like, and I've put that down and I've put that's not okay. Again, I can't say anything criminal here, but it's not okay. It's not okay. Then Lorraine, I can't remember what her surname was, came on, and she was some sort of high producer for the BBC or director or something. And I've put here, I believe there were complaints. Now, I don't know if she'd said there was or there wasn't. Then it goes on to an interview between Russell Brand and Jimmy Savile, and it made me feel sick, to be honest. And at first I wrote guilty by association because I thought, why are they mentioning Jimmy Savile? Like, it's a bit naughty, but then when you listen to the conversation, it's disgusting. Really disgusting. I've put gross, badly behaved, narcissistic, womanising, demeaning, inappropriate, shocking, rock and roll, not okay. And the whole time I was watching that particular bit, my stomach was turning. Now, then it goes on to another radio thing that he did on BBC Two, I think, with Jonathan Ross, where they phoned, what's his name? Something Sachs, something to do with Fawlty Towers. They phoned him and left him a voicemail saying that Russell Brand had fucked his granddaughter, which was true. That's not okay. Like, that's not okay. I think it's okay to expose that kind of behaviour in terms of a TV show, to say this happened. I personally think that's newsworthy. It was done on the radio anyway. It's not a crime, though, and all this speculation today on Twitter, it's been very crime-related. Rape, sexual assault. That's not a crime. It's fucking gross, but it's not a crime. So I feel like maybe some of this stuff today was just clickbait to make us watch the programme. I mean, the programme was made well from what I can tell. I've wrote here, cover-ups galore. It was talking about different TV channels, different organisations, Channel 4, BBC. There was another one mentioned, I think. And I feel like things probably were covered up, like complaints, definitely at least sexual harassment type claims. Again, this is all just my opinions based on what I've just watched. I'm not an expert, but I felt like I did the video earlier to sort of say what I thought about how they were marketing and using media, trial by media, and I stand by everything I've said, but I feel like I now owe a response to the actual show to show that I've watched it. Then it goes back to Nadia a little bit, and then it goes to 2013. A lady left traumatized. This lady met him at an AA meeting, played by another actor. She said that she had consensual, willing sex. She was called Phoebe. He sold her the dream, and I've wrote down love bombing. I'm familiar with narcissists and how they work already, so I wrote down love bombing. They ended up in a friendship and kind of working together, and she would see him sort of shagging like 5+ women a day, in the dressing rooms and stuff, and she sort of was like, oh, like it kind of hurt but kind of didn't. Now, she said something that I think it was Alice, something that Alice said. What it was it Alice that said this other bit? I've not wrote down who said the other bit. It may have been, it was Nadia. Nadia had mentioned that when she'd gone over for this booty call, she said did she say he raped her? I think she said he raped her. And she was quite descriptive about how it happened. I think she'd caught a bag under a picture on the wall and things. And it was played by an actor, let's bear in mind. It was played by an actor, but I believed the detail in this story. I feel like if something's happened to you, there's certain little bits that stick in your memory and certain little bits that don't. So she'd said that I think she said he tried to rape her after they'd gone through this phase of just being friends that worked together. And I've put her, I believed her, but actress. I think it's hard when it's an actress because you don't get a real feel. Because that particular actress, there were moments that I thought, oh, it feels like you are the person. And then there were other times when she said certain things and I thought, that sounds off. I think her accent maybe went a bit funny or something. But she said that when he was about to rape her, that his eyes went black. And one of the other girls had said that his eyes kind of glazed over and it was really scary. And when I heard that bit, I kind of thought, ooh, that's a bit similar. Like that's given me not good vibes. Then it went on to speak about one of his ex-girlfriends. I think she was called Jordan Martin. And she mentioned in one of her books that he sexually assaulted her. I don't think she named him, but I think it was like obvious it was about him. So when it starts getting to this many people, you have got to ask the question, is there some truth in this? It's hard because they used actors. And then you've got to be understanding that they do reserve the right to stay anonymous. And then you've got to think, well, if you're going to publicly speak about it, should you remain anonymous? And then you've got to think, these people that make these shows, they want you to believe it. So it doesn't mean, just because I'm saying I believe these victims, doesn't mean I believe the whole thing. It doesn't mean I don't believe it either. But you've got to bear in mind when they make a programme with a certain agenda, we've got a story and we want you to believe it. It will be edited in a way to make that so. So it's not that I don't believe it, I'm just aware of that. I'm aware that you can edit things to look a certain way. However, then it goes back to Alice, the 16-year-old. So this is where she calls his agent. So this happened to a few years ago, and then she phoned his agent in 2020. And this is what I've wrote down. Called his agent. Why, if not for money? And that's before they even went on to that they accused her of wanting money. My only concern there is I don't understand the agenda of calling the agent. I don't understand the point of that. I feel like she should have phoned the police, but then if we go back to hers, there was no criminal thing to report to the police, I don't think. 16, not illegal. Pretending to be nice. Yeah, I don't think there was a criminal accusation to be made there. So I don't understand the call to the agent. However, I do believe her. I do believe that she was used. And I do believe that she was abused. And I do believe that she was taken advantage of. But I don't think she said that she was assaulted or raped. So then I wrote, in summary, I believe as a viewer, I do believe the victims in the show, but that doesn't mean it's true, because the show was made to make us believe it. This is the problem with the press and the media. Because they are not credible, if there's something that's true, how do we believe it? I also don't believe that it should be on TV before a criminal investigation. So any of the parts where criminal accusations are made, there should be a criminal investigation before it goes on TV. You can't call somebody a groomer when there's no one under 18 involved, no one under 16 involved. It's icky. Listen, it's icky. But and you can't call anyone a child when they're not technically by law a child. You can't call somebody a rapist on TV without reporting it to the police. Then there's a lot of issues around that, isn't there, that's separate to that. So, yeah, it's a hard one. I've watched it and I believe it. But just because I believe it doesn't mean it's true. And because I know what I know with the press, I don't know whether to... Oh, I can see my hairline now. And because I know what I know with the press and the media, I don't know whether to believe it's true. Some of the things that were said in that, though, I think it was Rachel, the one that had worked for him, she had said that, you know, she sees his stuff online now and it really triggers her and stuff. And I think I can relate a little bit to that. And I think I can relate a little bit to not reporting somebody that's in a position of power. I think I've come to the conclusion that I 100% believe the victims. But I think the media have gone the wrong way about this. I think there should be criminal investigations on the bits that are relevant. Yeah, fair enough, do a show about how he was a womanizer and all the rest of it. And I get that seeing somebody that's obviously turned their life around, that's done really horrible things or made you feel really horrible in the past, I get why they would feel a certain kind of way about that. You know, he's living his best life, family life, doing his, I think it's Buddhism, and I can see how that would trigger somebody that feels they've been violated by somebody in the past. So I get that. And it wasn't clear whether any criminal things were made, if any criminal investigations took place, but I feel like they would have mentioned it. Feel like it would be relevant enough to mention it, and it wasn't mentioned. So that's where I think there's a missing chunk. I think today there's been a lot of clickbait in that they wanted us to watch this programme, and Channel 4 probably just got some really good ratings out of that. But when you break it down, it doesn't prove he was a rapist, it doesn't prove he was a groomer, it makes it very believable, and it certainly makes it believable that he was a narcissist, that he was disgustingly behaved. I forgot how badly behaved he was till I watched some of those clips on there. But it doesn't change the way that I feel on the media. So I think it's definitely made me, not that I didn't believe the victims to start with because I'd not heard the victims' stories, but listening to that, I do absolutely believe the women that were talking, absolutely believe. It's just missing that criminal bit for the criminal stuff, that's all. I don't think it should be on TV or online, the criminal parts, and unless it's proven. It's a hard one. It's a hard one. I genuinely do hope that those ladies who obviously weren't feeling at peace before, I hope they are feeling at peace now. Yeah. feel like I need to watch it again because I'm still... This is the problem. When the press are not credible and they use a journalist that's definitely not credible. Because this is the other thing, on some of those screens it said things like, the journalist has seen. This was it. This was the bit I forgot to mention. There were bits that said the journalist has seen messages that confirm something or other, but it didn't show the messages. And it just reminded me, and I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it were things like in my case, where the journalist who wrote the story on me, who's also done this, she came into my home with a fake identity, pretending to be a customer. She had a hidden camera attached to her, and she had video footage of me in my home and my son in my home. Now, my son came down later on that evening and she was basically taking ages to leave my house, despite the fact I wasn't doing a treatment for her. And he came down in his boxer shorts because that's how he used to sleep at that time, and he was a little boy then. He came down in his boxer shorts and he'd been in the bath, he'd bathed himself, and he came down and he was like, oh, someone's still here. And I know she was facing him at one point. And then when I realised she had a hidden camera, I thought, you've got video footage of my son in his boxer shorts. That's fucked up. And I know that she was in my house for 1 hour and 45 minutes. And when she had to provide, or when the paper had to provide a copy of the video footage, it was only something like 45 minutes long or something. There was round about an hour worth of footage missing. And I thought, that's dodgy. You're literally like lying about your evidence. Like yeah. So again, I don't know what to believe. I believe the victims. I believe the victims, but I feel like the lead up to the show made it seem like there was a lot of criminal things in there, and I feel like most of the show was about what a disgusting womanizer he was, which, let's be honest, we kind of knew that anyway. Doesn't make it okay, because like when you see it back, you're like, oh yeah, you actually were vile. Yeah, this is the problem with the press, because I do not know what to believe. Because that particular journalist is the last journalist on the planet, I would believe. Because I know of more than just my article that wasn't true, that was inaccurate. And I feel like, let's say these women were the ones that had said they were raped or sexually assaulted. Again, I stand by, I believe them, but some of them were played by actors, so I believe the actor. So you've got to bear that in mind. But I shouldn't have put that journalist on it. That's not me just getting at that journalist. If you're going to be dealing with a rape accusation or a sexual assault accusation, you just need to be putting credible people on the job, because that's the thing putting doubt in my mind. It's not the victims that have been part of that show, and not even the actors that played the victims on part of that show. It's the involvement of someone I personally know is not credible, whose work is not credible. And this is where the problem lies. So